The data server is a component of Tableau server that provides centralized management of Tableau data extracts and database connections. It enables IT and other database professionals to develop data sources for often less technical business users who are performing ad hoc analyses in Tableau Desktop. As you can see here in the Connect to Data tab, we have the option to connect directly to Tableau server. The Tableau Desktop users will connect to these shared data sources just as they would any other data source. A published data source can be used by multiple workbooks and can be accessed by anyone with Tableau server credentials. Now that the business users have connected, the queries will be executed on the server rather than on the desktop. There is no need to install and manage the database drivers on the client machines. I'm now going to play the role of a DBA. I'm going to go into the data window and connect to some data. Because I'm the DBA, I know the relationships between tables. I can connect to the proper databases as well as establish any joins needed for analyses for my business users. Once I've specified the join, or maybe I'm writing custom SQL to connect, I can establish this connection. Tableau is going to connect to that data and recognize fields as measures and dimensions. At this point, I can choose to change the data model. The data model is the repository for additional metadata. Using Tableau, it's very easy to manipulate this model to make it more business user friendly. For example, I can choose to change data types, edit field properties to add any additional comments to the fields. So when our business users hover over it, it explains what the field does. I can use aliases, I can hide or rename fields, as well as create groups, sets, hierarchies, as well as develop calculated fields for my business users. For an example, I can choose to hide status. Maybe I want to then create a quick hierarchy, so I can simply drag and drop to create that hierarchy. Once I've established this data source in Tableau, I can choose to publish to the server. I can give it a particular connection name, as well as specify the authentication method. If I've created an extract and I want to share that extract, it also gives me the option to set that extract to refresh on a particular schedule, as well as I can establish permissions for those users. A data source connector is unable to, for example, delete fields or rename fields, as well as create any new hierarchies. That's all part of the master data source. And so data source connectors can only augment that data model with additional calculated fields, whereas a data source editor will be able to easily make any changes to that master data source and republish and overwrite that original data source. So I'm going to go ahead and publish to the server, and I'm just going to overwrite it. I'm now going to log off and log in as a business user. Once I log in, I'll be able to have access to all of those shared data sources on the server. So I can go ahead and then connect into that data source that's been published by my DBA. And now I have the flexibility to ask my own questions of the data. As you can see, I'm not able to reorganize the hierarchies or delete any fields because that's all defined in that master Tableau server data source. But I have the ability to augment with my own calculated fields if I need to. Imagine now that I have a workbook that I developed with my SQL Server database, and I want to then swap it with my Tableau Server data source. So we have our SQL Server connection, we've developed a view. Now I want to connect into that master data source, so I'll just go ahead and connect to data and then choose that data source. So right now we're connected still to our SQL Server, but if I want to swap those data sources without rebuilding any of the workbooks, one thing I can do is choose to replace data source. And when I click OK, now Tableau is going to be using our Tableau Server data source as my primary, and I can very easily continue with that hierarchy that was established by my DBA. Any changes to the master data source by data source editors will be automatically propagated to the workbooks that use that shared data source. If sharing a Tableau data extract, you can easily set it to be refreshed on a schedule, and all workbooks connected to it will automatically be updated when it is refreshed. By sharing data source connections within your organization, you can create one single version of the truth and empower business users with the flexibility to ask their own questions of the data. Tableau's metadata model is simple, flexible, and powerful. It fulfills the Tableau philosophy by enabling people with the right skills to be able to appropriately leverage and impact the model at the right time. People with database expertise can establish, define, and maintain connections across the deployment. Authors and power users can extend the data model as needed to satisfy their requirements. End users have the flexibility to use the fields in a variety of roles to answer their specific questions. At each stage of the analytic, development, or production cycle, users have the appropriate ability to use or augment the metadata. This comprehensive, user-driven approach to metadata results in broader adoption by business users with less intervention and maintenance required by IT. Overall, this elegantly designed approach and the numerous breakthrough innovations which are incorporated in this approach are the key reasons why customers have found tremendous success with Tableau.